Welcome to another team selection. I'm actually going to be talking about my wildcard, which I activated the other day. I missed a few price rises, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter. And I've never been really one for price rises and price falls, as I always tell you. And I showed you my team on stream, but I've made one change really. And there may be further ones in the future. And of course, I'll be doing a best wildcard teams video where I show different team structures and players you can go for. So without further ado, let's head straight into the video. So addressing the big elephant in the room, and no, we're not talking about my FPL team, we're talking about the face reveal. Some people have been asking, when are you going to do it? And to be honest, it's not something I've paid too much attention to. I've just done the videos, and I think the main thing is talking about football, FPL, and UCL Fantasy. But here I am, and if you guys and girls want, then I can keep the webcam in future videos and live streams. But otherwise, doesn't really matter, does it? Doesn't make too much of a difference. But speaking about Game Week 7, I got 40 points and 477 points overall. And I went from around 55k, I'd say, to 81. Not ideal, to be honest. And as always, remember to join the league. The code is on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And you can always follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Dylan_RCM, if you wish. I am active on those platforms too. And you can always send in your teams with your wildcards, even your normal teams, and I can rate them in future videos. There should be one ahead of Game Week 8, and that will be very interesting to see. And of course, I'll be talking about the best wildcard teams, as I said before. And my eyesight is terrible, so guess what? I actually wear glasses. Don't judge, okay? Don't call me four eyes and all of that good stuff. But yeah, as for my team in Game Week 7, I've got Sanchez in goal, and him and White, to be honest, were probably two of the best players for the game week. They got me 13 points combined. Obviously, Ben White got that bonus point. And Arsenal versus Brighton was a pretty decent game, to be honest. Was it? Maybe not. But yeah, Brighton had, I'd say, the better of the chances. If any team deserved to win it, I'd probably say it was Brighton. And especially in the first half, Arsenal were under the cosh quite a bit. Luke Shaw, once again, just disappointing, and I just don't know why I kept him. I mean, if anything, I should have gotten rid of him and kept Trent Alexander-Arnold just in case. But, it is what it is. A bit of another foolish decision by me to keep more faith in Shaw, who just hasn't been doing the goods this season. And then Cody, no clean sheet once again. Obviously, he has been getting one or two here and there, but not on a consistent basis. And that's the thing with Wolves. Going forward, at least, they're looking better. Then you have, Jimenez and Hwang, who are looking exceptional. But players like Cody and Semedo, Marçal, they're just not really doing it. And of course, on a wildcard, I still think they're good options, especially up until Game Week 14. But then when you see the fixture swing afterwards, I'm just not so sure if we should be going for their assets when you can just be going for Liverpool, ones like Trent Alexander-Arnold at the back, Chelsea and City defenders. I think that's probably the way to go. And then you have Livramento, Duffy, and then Ben White, for example. I probably would opt for those sorts of players over Connor Cody. And then we have Rudiger. I brought him in, and it was the wrong Chelsea player to bring in this week. Long term, I still like Rudiger as a pick and still believe he's the best or second best Chelsea defender you can own. Azpilicueta was the one who got 2 assists, and he got 10 points against Southampton. And of course, Chilwell came in for Alonso, his first start of the season, and he scored. So that just makes the Alonso situation even more complicated. As for the midfield, very disappointing again. Sarr got a yellow card. I was expecting great things from him, but to be fair, he did do well for me in Game Week 6. Can't really complain too much. And of course, Watford have changed their manager. They've now got Ranieri. Let's see how he does. But the fixtures for Watford, if we actually take a quick look here, they're just awful. I mean, look how many reds there are. And the main thing that concerns me is Watford. I've always talked about Sarr being a good asset. I think around his price, I like him as an asset more than pretty much anyone else other than Rafinha. The problem is Watford, how inconsistent they are. So sometimes Sarr is literally just left by his own, in my opinion, and he can't really be as consistent of an FPL asset as he would in a better team. But maybe now Watford can get into a bit of form, but it's looking really difficult at the moment with those fixtures. So on a wild card, why go for him? This is the thing. I mean, obviously I'd love to have him, but because of the fixtures, I just can't bring myself to do so. And then Greenwood once again, just blanking. Obviously, before Ronaldo joined, he was looking really sharp and he was getting the goals. Obviously, a few of them were slightly lucky. The goalkeepers should have done better, but Greenwood is a good finisher, and unfortunately, I just don't really see him reaching the same heights from the end of last season and even from what the first few game weeks compared to what he's doing now, with Ronaldo being the main focal point up top for Manchester United. And then with Rashford coming back, it looks like he's going to be back fairly soon. I just don't really see a future for Greenwood. If Sancho gets into a bit of form, then I would suspect Greenwood will be on the bench a bit more often than not, at least compared to the first few game weeks of the season. And then let's actually talk about probably the best FPL asset of all time, and a 13-pointer against Manchester City. And the goal he scored was absolutely sensational. I mean, he's leaving players like Laporte and Cancelo in the dust and looking like amateur defenders. He left Bernardo Silva on the ground, and by the way, he had a fantastic performance, arguably man of the match in that game as well. That game was such a high quality match, and the thing is, the reason why I captained Ronaldo over Salah is because I thought his ceiling would be higher because of the opposition, but sometimes just back form over fixtures, that's a kind of key lesson. It's not always about the fixtures, otherwise you just see who has a green fixture and you get them in, and FPL is that simple, but it doesn't work like that, especially with high quality players like Mohamed Salah. It's just absolutely exceptional, and even if he's got some tough games on the horizon like Manchester United and West Ham, I don't care. He's getting in my team. I'm never getting rid of him pretty much unless he gets injured or something else serious happens. So Salah, just such a good player. Then we have Antonio, my vice captain. He actually blanked, slightly surprising, but I'm not too surprised by the result. And Brentford, of course, fantastic performance by them, a late winner. And to be honest, with West Ham and Antonio, there's an argument that you could go without him and maybe go for Jimenez or other strikers who have a better fixture run. But I do like Mikel Antonio, to be honest, and despite the poor fixtures, I think he can still do well in some of them, and I might actually keep him on the wild card. Of course, I'm going to be showing you very soon, but yeah, really, sometimes fixtures aren't everything, but there is an argument to be made to go without Mikel Antonio. And then Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, the fixtures have turned, and obviously we're looking really around game week 15 onwards. That's when you want to have him, but for the time being, up until game week 14, I just think there are better choices elsewhere, and you're not going to be captaining him very often. Maybe against Watford, maybe against Arsenal, but other than that, I don't think you'd be captaining Ronaldo regularly. So there's an argument to be made to just get rid of him now. I think this is a good time to get rid of him for Lukaku or Jamie Vardy. And by the way, Vardy is looking exceptional at the moment. He's really tempting on a wild card. Jota got a yellow card. It is what it is, and I'm happy that he blanked because he was on my bench, and a bit surprising that Firmino didn't start, but at the end of the day, Jota has been the one who started pretty much every game this season. Ayling's still injured, and Richardson is pretty much, it doesn't really matter. And then Foster, I had another key decision to make. Should I start Foster or Sanchez? And the last 3 game weeks, I have to say, I've been getting it spot on. I was starting Sanchez in the first 3 game weeks, and also now in game week 6. But in game weeks 4 and 5, I got Foster when he got 1 or 2 more points. So really, I've made pretty much just a few points extra, so it doesn't really matter. Now let's look at my team heading into game week 7 or 8, should I say, with the wildcard activated. And I missed a few price rises, to be honest, with Cancelo and Ramsdale, I believe. And I just think it was time to just pull the trigger and get this done. Now, there can be some changes up until the deadline, and I'm going to be making an updated wildcard draft video, and then I will be explaining all the changes there. Now, I'll be honest, in goal, I'm not too sure. Obviously, Foster is pretty much going to be the best 4 million keeper. He's got the highest chance of starting, so that's kind of a no-brainer. But looking at my starting goalkeeper, there's Ramsdale, Raya, and possibly Jose Sarr, who are looking really good. But I'm mainly looking at the first 2. And there's actually, I'd say, a really feasible argument to have Ramsdale and Raya as your rotating goalkeepers. And if you can get it right most weeks, then I think you will benefit from it in the long term. And it avoids the kind of need to make a goalkeeper transfer later down the line, especially if Ramsdale does lose his place. But to be honest, I don't think he will, because it's his place to lose. So obviously, if he makes a big mistake or he has a string of bad performances, then Leno can definitely come back in. But I think Arsenal in general looks stronger with him at the back between the sticks, because he also communicates well with his defence. He's also very commanding, and that's something that Leno isn't really too good at. And also the distribution. I think Ramsdale is significantly better, at least this season so far, than Leno in that department, and it helps with Arsenal's build-up, playing out from the back. So I think Ramsdale should be good. What I would say about him, and this is another reason why I'm not too sure about him, is the kind of fixtures. Obviously they are good in the long run up until game week 20 really, and even you could argue longer than that, but there are some really difficult fixtures at some point. So you look at game weeks 14 to game week 17, and that could be really tough for Arsenal, especially Man United away, and Liverpool away is really tough. I'd be surprised if Liverpool don't score at least 2 goals in that match. So really, obviously the fixtures look really promising for Arsenal, but even then, they are capable of making some mistakes and just conceding against these teams you don't expect them to. But I would say is that the new back line with Tomiyasu, Ben White and Gabriel, Tierney and Ramsdale at the back, it does look more solid. And last season, Arsenal were the third best defence in terms of expected goals conceded and also in terms of actual goals conceded. So Ramsdale is a good pick. But what I would say to you lot is maybe consider Raya as well. But at the moment, I do have Ramsdale. I'm backing Arsenal slightly. Hopefully, they don't let me down. Now, as for my defence, there are quite a few things that, could be up for debate. Now, the big question here is, do you go for double City or double Chelsea defence? A lot of people have been asking me this in my reaction stream, in deadline streams, and even just in comments of other videos. And in my opinion, long-term, double Man City defence is the way to go, so long as Cancelo continues to start. And that obviously depends on Zinchenko. But Cancelo and Diaz is definitely my duo of choice. The reason why I've gone for Azpilicueta and Rudiger and only have Cancelo is because Manchester City have some really tough fixtures, at least in the immediate short term. So you look around game week 11 to 13, and I wouldn't be surprised if Man City concede a goal or two here and there. And of course, in the other fixtures, they could definitely keep a lot of clean sheets and Cancelo can get some attacking returns. But then you look at Chelsea, and I think up until game week 14, it just makes more sense to have double Chelsea defence. And then once the fixtures slightly turn, then you could maybe get rid of one of them, Azpilicueta or Rudiger, and move them on to Diaz. So that's the way I'm looking at it at the moment, but there's no right or wrong answer. But in my opinion, long term, forgetting about fixtures and the immediate short term up until game week 14, I think double City defence is the way to go. They have better underlying stats and they've just been more solid this season on the eye test. But Chelsea, of course, they've got a great defence, great individuals in there, but it's also the system that enables them to keep so many clean sheets. Now there's the question of Rudiger and Azpilicueta. If you had to pick one, who would you go for? Obviously, at this moment in time, Azpilicueta would be the kind of favourite because of his attacking potential and also just the ability to get bonus points, and he's so nailed. He can play right wing back and as one of the back three. With Rudiger, of course, he can only play as a centre back. And to be honest, they're both the most nailed and they're both really good options. But at this moment in time, of course, if you had to have one defender from Chelsea up until game week 14, I'd probably go for Azpilicueta, especially when you have, for example, Reece James injured. He should be back fairly soon, of course. We don't know exactly when. But yeah, I do like the look of Rudiger and Azpilicueta. Azpilicueta slightly more at this moment in time. And of course, Cancelo, talking about him, I think, obviously, if you had to pick between him and Diaz, normally I'd pick Diaz in terms of security of starts. But right now, Cancelo is nailed and he's just so good, offensively. Even against Liverpool, he was looking so sharp with the passes he was making, very incisive, and he can get a lot of bonus points. His attacking potential is always there. But what I would say is that his underlying stats haven't been too impressive, but I think City will score a bucket load of goals, and then you see fixtures like Burnley where they tend to score so many. I think Cancelo could be an exceptional choice there, maybe even for the captaincy, but I probably wouldn't go too far. But at this moment in time, with Zinchenko out, with Cancelo being nailed, I would go for Cancelo over Diaz. And then looking at my other two defenders, they are budget, and I have considered going big at the back, maybe downgrading one of my midfielders or attackers, who I'll discuss later on, and getting Trent Alexander-Arnold. That's something I've definitely considered, and I will definitely actually, be very close to making a transfer very similar to that if we have news of Trent definitely being back for game week 8. Now, in my opinion, Trent will be back by that time, and if not, he will make it for game week 9 against Manchester United. But for the time being, I've got Shane Duffy, and it's kind of good cover considering that I've got Sanchez, out of my team now, and I think they can keep a clean sheet against Norwich. Obviously, some tough fixtures straight after that, but still, in the long term, quite a mixed bag, but some good fixtures sprinkled in between, and Shane Duffy is looking good. Of course, there is Veltman as well, who's looking more offensive. I don't like the fact that he's getting a lot of yellow cards though, but I do like Shane Duffy and his attacking threat. He nearly scored against Arsenal as well. With a better finish, he definitely would have been able to. But yeah, Shane Duffy is still a good option in my opinion. And then we have Livramento. Now, what I would say about him is that there are some fixtures, of course, that are looking so promising on paper, like Norwich and Burnley. But would I be playing Livramento in those games? I'm not too sure, because the kind of backline is already sorted by having the Chelsea defenders and also having Cancelo. So I'm not too sure if he would actually even play regardless, but I still think he offers great value. He can get some attacking returns. He's such a promising player in real life. And to be honest with Livramento, I think Southampton can keep clean sheets from time to time. but still I have my doubts about Southampton, and he is just a budget option, of course. And yeah, I'm just not too sure if I would be actually playing Livramento, but still a good option to have coming off the bench if needed, and that's the important thing with him. And now with the defence complete, let's look at the midfield. Rafinha has always been someone I've talked about as a long-term option, even when Leeds were struggling. Obviously, they got a really important victory against Watford, but before that, they were struggling to score goals and to get wins. And Rafinha's performance against West Ham, I mean, I was already really, wanted to get him into my team, but that just completely sold it for me. And around his price, you're not going to get too, many better players. And with Bamford, maybe, obviously he is injured right now, but not reaching the same heights as last season, I think Rafinha, for significantly cheaper, can offer that value and coverage for Leeds United. And look at the fixtures long term, they're really good up until, you'd say, game week 15. So really like Rafinha. And even against some of the tougher teams, he can do well, but maybe that would be a time to get rid of him when he faces Chelsea and Man City back to back. But for the time being, I think he's a great option, and his ownership isn't too high compared to maybe what we would have expected at the beginning of the season, when everyone kind of saw Rafinha as a no-brainer pick in your team. And then Mohamed Salah, and as the captain at the moment, by the way, against Watford. And of course, Watford could have a managerial bounce with Ranieri, and there are different choices I could go for the captaincy, like Son and Lukaku. But Salah is just in such good form. I don't want to go against him at the moment. And in terms of, why do I have him in my team? He's the highest scoring player in FPL. He's the joint top goal scorer in the Premier League alongside Jamie Vardy. He's got good fixtures in the long term, in my opinion, and even then he's fixture proof. He proved it against arguably the best defence in the world in Manchester City. This guy, just have him in your team. I'm actually surprised, because I'm that blind. I'm actually going to, 60% ownership. So nearly 40% of people don't own him, and to be honest, I just don't see why you wouldn't own him. And obviously Lukaku, Ronaldo, we've got so many options in FPL this season, but Salah for me is just a step above the rest. He's arguably the best Premier League player at the moment. And then we have Townsend. Now this is something I'm not too sure about, and if I'm being honest, long term, maybe Mbeumo would be the better choice from Brentford. And one thing that I'm a bit kind of cautious and concerned about is what is going to be the impact from Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin going to be on Townsend's performances. Obviously, he has done well even when they were in the team, but most of his kind of double-digit returns have been when both of them have been missing, and Townsend has kind of assumed the role of being the main attacker. And Demarai Gray's another good choice, same with Doucouré, of course, and Everton assets are providing great value, but I'm a bit kind of concerned about Townsend, and I might not go for him in the end, but obviously points don't lie, and he is on penalties when Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin aren't there. He is on other set pieces too, and he looks a threat from both assist potential and also in terms of actual goal threat, and the fixtures are pretty good in the long run. And even West Ham, it's a tough fixture, but I wouldn't be surprised if Everton score one or two past them. So I do like Townsend, but I might go for someone else. Even Gallagher, he's still a good choice, and there's also, I could go for Saka, for example, but I think Mbeumo is the one that's tempting me to go for him maybe instead. And then we have Heung-min Son, great captaincy shout, and to be honest, he's just so consistent, to be honest. And the thing I like about Son is that he can get double-digit returns so often, and he's just so consistent. And since the beginning of last season, only Bruno Fernandes kind of matches him in terms of double-digit returns. His price is obviously really good. When Spurs score, it mainly comes through Son, whether it's an assist or a goal. And if he does do that, he's more likely going to get bonus points than not. What I would say about Son is that in terms of the next 4 fixtures as a whole, not very promising, at least in terms of the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating, but I think he can still score against these teams, West Ham, Man United and Everton. And when you look at his fixtures long term, up until game week 25 really, they're exceptional, just a few tough fixtures here and there. So Son for me is a really good one, and the reason why I'm tempted to go for him really is because when I look at the midfield, obviously we have so many options, but other than Salah and maybe Rafinha around his price bracket, I'm not too confident in the others, kind of sustaining levels of performances, being completely nailed in their team and just ticking along nicely and being consistent. But with Son, I know he's going to be consistent. I know he's going to score more often than not, and if not, get an assist and just be one of the best players in the Premier League. So I like having him there, and it strengthens my midfield considerably. But of course, because of those immediate tough fixtures, and because there are so many other choices elsewhere, I could go for Vardy up front, for example, and Trent at the back. There is an argument to be made to actually go away from Son, but at the moment I am considering him heavily, and he is in my team. My final midfielder of choice is Douglas Luiz. So far this season, he has been one of the best around his price bracket, and he's playing a bit more offensively this season, so I do like that about Douglas Luiz, and he's just a bench fodder option, to be honest. And of course, if you need that 0.1 million extra, just go for Brownhill, but otherwise, Allen, Douglas Luiz, Ramsey's looking pretty promising, although he's not completely nailed. These sorts of players you want to be targeting around 4.5 million. Yeah, I think Douglas Luiz is one of the best ones to go for. Let me know what you think, or who you think is the best 4.5 million option, and not really much that needs to be discussed there. Now, I've got Ivan Toney here on the bench at the moment, but really good fixtures, and I want one of him or Mbeumo for those fixtures between game week 10 and 12, where they face Burnley, Norwich and Newcastle, who obviously coincidentally happen to be three of the worst teams defensively so far this season. So I want to have Toney or Mbeumo. I'm not too sure about a double up, to be honest, but obviously Brentford have been impressive and it's not the worst idea in the world, but I'd rather have one of them than both of them, and that's something I have to consider. So if I do go for Mbeumo midfield, maybe Toney will become Hwang, and he's someone I'm going to be discussing in future videos too. Of course, we can't ignore him, and his partnership with Jimenez could be very promising, to be honest. So it's definitely something to think about. But Ivan Toney, I think he is probably, if I had to pick one player, Ivan Mbeumo and Toney, I'd probably prefer Toney slightly, but Mbeumo for his price, especially around that, price bracket for midfielders where maybe only Townsend, Decore and Gray really appeal to me. That's why I might actually go for Mbeumo instead, but I think if I had to pick just one player, Toney is the one to go for. And then looking at my other two strikers, I've got Mikel Antonio despite the tough fixtures, and once again, he's not completely nailed in my team, but so far this season he's been one of the best players in FPL, and the fixtures is what mainly puts me off, and also Europa League. But one really good thing about Antonio actually is that he's not going to be playing with Jamaica during the international break, so he should be fully recharged ahead of game week 8 against Everton. And Everton, despite how good they've been, I still think that West Ham can score a few past them, especially if they're on it that day. So Antonio is definitely someone I'm considering, but if not, there is Jimenez. I could go for Hwang instead, or maybe just go for different options like Bamford when he's back, or Calvert-Lewin. So it's definitely something to think about. He's not completely nailed, but one player who is nailed nearly is Lukaku, but maybe he shouldn't be. And I've said this before in my reaction stream, and some people may disagree with me, but in my opinion, the form that Jamie Vardy is in, maybe he's the one to go for over Lukaku. But what I just don't want to do is go without Lukaku in games like Norwich at home, and also Newcastle and Burnley, once again three of the worst teams defensively this season. I think going without Lukaku in those sorts of games, I just wouldn't want to watch them. I'd probably feel sick. Maybe that's a bit too much, but yeah, I think that would just not be ideal. But other than that, I would rather have Jamie Vardy in the long run. So it's something I have to think about. I definitely want one of Lukaku or Vardy. But yeah, overall, Vardy's looking like the better player at the moment. And Lukaku sometimes seems a bit isolated by himself, really. And Chelsea have so many different options to score. With Leicester, they're really just mainly relying on Iheanacho and Vardy to score the goals. But with Lukaku, it's a bit different. Still, I think he's going to pick up some form and he's going to get some goals over the next few game weeks. So right now, Lukaku's in my team, but maybe, to be honest, he isn't completely nailed. Let me know what you think of this wildcard team overall. Of course, there are different ways to go about it, and honestly, there are probably some weaknesses in this team. So at the moment, I've got literally 0.4 million in the bank, I believe, and my squad value is around 100.8 million. But how do I get to Trent Alexander-Arnold? How do I get to Ronaldo around game week 15? Obviously, that's more of a, I'd say, less of a concern. Trent, though, I think I would definitely want to have him. How do I get to him? Honestly, it probably would require downgrading Son or Lukaku, and then using that money to upgrade a Cancelo or an Azpilicueta. And honestly, in the long run, I probably would prefer having Trent, Cancelo and a Chelsea defender, but I still like the double up of Chelsea and even City, especially in the long run. But thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. And once again, like I said, let me know what you think of this wildcard team. And yeah, there are definitely different ways to go about it and improve it. And I'm going to be making a best wildcard teams video, and I'm also going to be rating your teams and also your wildcard. So send them in to my Twitter and Instagram, Dylan_RCM. Just send a clean cropped image and make sure the image is of good quality. And if you follow me as well, you have a really good chance of featuring. So thank you so much for all the support, and obviously a kind of new setup today. Let me know what you think. It is obviously a bit strange to suddenly see, this ugly geezer showing his his face, but it is what it is. And thank you so much for all the support, and I'll see you next time.